Good evening, I'm Jason Vio. Katarina is away this week. Here's what's making news tonight.
I would like to see these EAs treated fairly because they take children from being dependent adults to potentially having those independent lives, and that's what every parent and really all of society should want for our kids.
It's pretty exciting. Now we're going to start seeing possibly some drawings come out. Give it a little time for some drawings to come out with respect to what the new hospital is going to really look like.
It's very important to maintain our protection against COVID-19, and according to the clinical trials and Health Canada, getting a booster shot will help boost that immune response.
Thanks for joining us. Education workers across the province continue to vote this hour on a strike mandate. They're CUPE members who work in roles like educational assistants, early childhood educators, and custodians. That vote is expected to end Sunday night. Now, bargaining continues with the province, and today, Ontario's education minister was in our area touring 2 schools under construction and visiting with student trustees. Our Dale Molnar reports on the negotiations over the new contract.
Educational assistants, such as Katie Bazonka, work with children who need support. Megan Ball-Rigdon has 2 children with autism. She says it's important for her that the EAs have careers that pay them a living wage.
Some people, even in the public, would say $39,000 sounds like an okay salary to get by, but we need to remember these are other women with families. These are women with their own children with special needs, and they are capped at a certain level of hours. They don't work through the summer. They don't get their wages spread out like teachers do, and the minister needs to consider how that impacts someone's life.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for your welcome.
Thank you for our new school.
Education Minister Stephen Lecce held a news conference outside the new Eastwood Parkview Public School construction site today. Lecce was there touting the more than $100 million being spent on school construction in the area. He defends the government's offer to the education workers and is asking them not to strike.
We are offering a fair offer, 8.24% for all workers within the education space. We value what they do, so much so that we've actually increased funding for almost 5,000 more staff working in our schools, more EAs, more ECs, more educators making a difference, in custodians.
School Board Trustee Gail Simcoe Hatfield would not comment on the negotiations, but agrees it is difficult keeping education assistants at the board.
So the role of the EA has really escalated. It's very important in terms of supporting the classroom teacher, and there just aren't enough people to employ in those positions right now. There is a labor shortage of education workers, and I think part of the reason is because our school board's pay rate is so much less than the private sector, and it's so much less than our coterminous boards.
Meanwhile, in response to the provincial offer, the CUPE union, which represents the workers, have been asking for a larger wage increase of $3.25 per hour. That's an 11.7% increase. The offer presented by the provincial government had an increase in the range of 33 cents per hour to 55 cents per hour. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The education minister also announced more money for a new elementary school in Tecumseh. DM Eagle Public School will eventually be replaced by a new school called North Shore. It was announced back in 2015, and today the province committed $25 million for the project. That's a $10 million increase. A spokesperson says the jump in cost is due to the pandemic and inflation. There's no timeline for when the school will be completed. More progress is being made on Windsor's new acute care hospital. Windsor Regional Hospital announced today that it has chosen a consultant. Stantec Architecture will help the design and development construction stages. Ontario's minister says the province is fully committed to getting the hospital built.
I was asked by Premier Ford to deliver a very clear message to the people of Windsor, Essex, and that is we will not delay your acute care hospital. We want to see this built, and we want to see this project completed. We are not going to be part of the delay in this project. We want this project to move forward.
The project has previously faced setbacks, though, including funding challenges and disputes over its location. Last year, the provincial government committed $9.8 million of its budget to the new hospital. Windsor Regional Hospital anticipates construction will begin in 2027, with the hospital being fully built by 2031. The Ontario government is expected to be coming out with a strategy for long COVID. The condition has led to some people being unable to work for months or even years. In a recent interview, the province's chief medical officer said hospitals have been submitting proposals to the government, looking for funding expected to help. For people dealing with the illness, it's long overdue. Lorenda Redekop has that story.
So I'm trying to adjust to being a disabled person, and it's really difficult.
Sonia Malley used to work as a tattoo artist in Toronto, was always busy, loved the outdoors. She says in March 2020, she got COVID and hasn't been able to work since.
Really debilitating migraines, I get a lot of paralysis on the right side of my face, very much like stroke-like symptoms. I have a lot of trouble with language, memory loss.
She's glad the Ontario government is looking at funding for long COVID, with long waits for the few COVID clinics that do exist.
The potential impact can be huge on our healthcare system and our economy.
This COVID researcher is part of the National Task Force on the post-COVID condition. He recognizes the challenge for governments, with more than 100 symptoms that make up long COVID, but says it's critical more support is available for patients.
They have lost everything that made them who they were. They are no longer working at all. They're very stressed about their financial situation. People will tell me that they're lucky if they can get out of bed for 2 hours a day without feeling exhausted for 3 days after that.
He'll be leading a clinical trial soon, testing 6 different medications. And while Dr. Quinn says vaccinations have meant fewer cases of long COVID, it's still happening in as high as 10% of cases.
We are going to see the long tail of COVID for a number of years to come, and even with vaccines, we're still seeing cases.
Sonia Malley is also part of an online COVID long hauler group that advocates for more supports. She recently applied for disability after relying on her savings, including to send for testing in the US and UK. She has questions about what else long COVID could mean.
Are you looking at cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, autoimmune diseases? It's terrifying.
In addition to more treatment options, she wants the government to add more financial support. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
The province has announced more people are eligible for the latest COVID-19 vaccine. Anyone 18 and older can now get a dose of the bivalent booster, but it comes at a time when there appears to be waning interest in booster shots. Health unit data shows 46% of people in our region have 3 doses, and that's compared to 83% of people who got their first shot. To talk about all of this, Sebastian DiPietro is a pharmacist at a Shoppers in Windsor and joins us now. Thank you so much for being here and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the bivalent booster. What exactly is that?
So according to what Health Canada tells us, the bivalent booster is a vaccine that contains the antibody that produces the antibodies for the original COVID virus as well as the new Omicron variant.
Okay, so if you had COVID before, a COVID infection or a booster shot recently, should you get this booster at this point?
Well, yes, depending on when you got vaccinated or when you recovered from your infection, there is definitely a waiting period. And that can vary between people. So what I recommend is to speak with your pharmacist or your doctor or other healthcare provider to let them know exactly how long you should wait in your specific case.
Okay, so case-by-case basis. So what are some potential side effects of this new booster?
Very similar with other vaccines, people may feel sort of under the weather for a few days, maybe some, redness or irritation at the injection site. But we don't expect, according to Health Canada, anything different from the other ones that we've seen.
Okay. And as you know, we've seen changes in restrictions, mask mandates lifted, all the COVID-19 measures at the border, for example, will be removed. With that all said, why should people get this new booster shot?
Well, it's very important to maintain our protection against COVID-19. And according to the clinical trials and Health Canada, getting a booster shot will help boost that immune response that we can have to keep us safe from having a severe outcome to COVID-19.
And people with underlying medical conditions, we've heard over the course of this pandemic, are more at risk if they get COVID-19. But if someone is healthy and has no risk factors, is it necessary that they get this new booster?
I would discuss that with the pharmacist or with your healthcare provider. But the good news is that these vaccines are available at Shoppers Drug Mart and Loblaws, among other pharmacies, so that they're very much available for people to book an appointment and get their vaccine, their booster.
And if one of your patients came to you with that question, for example, I'm a healthy person, should I get this new booster? What advice would you give them?
Everyone's situation is different. So in that case, we would really have to discuss the specifics of their case, their family, people they're around, their own specific lifestyle and everything. So I think really it really depends on the person. So it's case by case, and it's that personal decision that you're going to make with your help of your healthcare provider.
Okay. And if someone has never received a COVID vaccine and now wants to get the shot, would they move right into this bivalent shot to best protect themselves against the newer variant, for example?
So according to Health Canada and Public Health, this is offered as a booster only at this time. So they would have to discuss with their healthcare provider the best option for them.
All right, and last question for you. How much supply do pharmacists have access to for this new booster shot, for example? Do you anticipate any shortages?
We haven't seen that at this time, and we're able to get the supply that we need for the demand that we have. So I anticipate that will continue going forward, but I really don't know that entirely going forward, but I anticipate nothing at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Sebastian DiPietro is a pharmacist in Windsor. 3 days after Fiona slammed into Atlantic Canada, residents are still dealing with the destruction left behind by the storm. And as Alison Northcott tells us, the devastation is so widespread, residents say they can't even begin to think about recovery yet.
Days later, there's still a sense of disbelief.
And as you look behind me and so on, there's nothing but a total disaster.
The Port aux Basques fire chief says this community needs a lot of help to clean up and rebuild destroyed homes.
Where do they pick up the pieces and get moving and so on, right? It's going to be difficult for them.
I could use that.
Melissa Barr is picking up donated clothes at a local elementary school. She and her family left their home in a panic during the storm. No time to take anything with them.
It's very emotional, because it's our first home we've ever owned. We've never owned anything in my whole life. I'm 44 years old, and now I don't have a home anymore.
The Canadian military is on the ground in 3 Atlantic provinces. Their task is to clear debris from roads and bridges so power can be restored. There is plenty of community action, too, like this truckload of donations.
It got bigger than we expected, and it's a great thing.
It's going to go to all those people who have lost their homes and they can't go back into their homes. They need all this.
This is a big part of our identity in PEI, the coastal communities.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau toured some of the affected areas.
We know that it's not just right now that they need help. It'll be for weeks and months and even years to come, and we will be there for each other.
Fisherman Marvin Graham sees his livelihood turned upside down. For many communities, entire industries like agriculture, tourism, and fisheries have been disrupted.
The waters just keep raising every time there's a storm. It just keeps getting higher and higher. I don't know what they're going to do. It needs a lot of work.
So many areas need work. Schools on PEI will remain closed until at least next week. In Nova Scotia, some schools will reopen on Wednesday as crews continue to restore power. But that's just one part of the cleanup, and there's so much more ahead. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Another hurricane is churning through the Gulf of Mexico and is headed to the west coast of Florida. Forecasters expect Hurricane Ian to intensify into a Category 4 storm before it makes landfall tomorrow. Governor Ron DeSantis is warning residents to brace for, quote, a major disaster. Authorities have issued evacuation orders for more than 2 million people, including those in parts of St. Petersburg and Tampa. They are also taking other steps to prepare for the storm.
The Florida National Guard has activated 5,000 Florida Guardsmen, as well as 2,000 additional Guardsmen from Tennessee, Georgia, and North Carolina that have been activated to help.
Some residents are leaving the region while others are stocking up on supplies and filling sandbags to protect their homes. Ian struck Cuba earlier today as a Category 3 storm with sustained winds of 200 kilometers per hour. It caused widespread damage, leading Cuban authorities to declare emergencies in 6 areas. For more than 500 municipal candidates in Ontario, the race was over before it even began. No one ran against them, and they've all been acclaimed. According to an analysis by CBC News, that includes 1/3 of all mayors in the province. And we're seeing that in Windsor, Essex, where the mayor and deputy mayor positions in both Tecumseh and LaSalle have been acclaimed. Kate Porter explains.
Steve Fournier gets 4 more years as head of this rural township south of Ottawa. He's always wanted a Steve for Reeves shirt, but there's been no need.
It's a funny thing. I always say I'll at least want to buy one election sign. I've never had that chance.
Never won?
No. So this will be my 3rd term of being acclaimed all 3 times.
Fournier has lived here his whole life. He knows a lot of people, every nook, cranny, and back road. He works hard to keep township taxes low.
I think we're doing a good job. I think the taxpayers appreciate that, and they're behind us for this election.
Fournier says us because his entire council has been acclaimed.
It's very, very sad. It's very depressing.
This woman ran last time and is kicking herself she didn't encourage others to put their names on a ballot.
We're in a state of talking about democracy right now. You know, that's the big discussion. And we look at this, we look at what's happening locally with those numbers, that's very disconcerting.
It's not just Drummond North Elmsley. CBC News has found 31 other councils where everyone was acclaimed ahead of the October vote. They're mostly small, rural, or northern places. Meanwhile, 1/3 of mayors across Ontario got their seats uncontested in places as big as Newmarket.
There are more acclamations in these municipal elections, but there are also several hundred fewer people running. It could be fatigue. Municipal politicians we've spoken to say that the pandemic has taken its toll. People aren't always all that kind or patient these days, and many have been threatened online and in person. But even without that, they say the job is tough.
In Oakville, 4 seats were automatically filled, but this councillor isn't even running to keep hers. Jasvinder Sandhu is a lawyer who jumped into politics hoping to help homeowners in her booming new subdivision.
Did I know what I was getting myself into? No, it's not a part-time job. I think it's a full-time job for part-time pay.
After she had a 3rd child during the term, she couldn't balance it all. One expert says better pay and meeting times might encourage more people from a wide range of perspectives to run.
We can start by looking at the structure of the job itself, but certainly we need to do more province-wide and locally to sort of drum up interest around being a councillor and serving your community.
Kate Porter, CBC News, Ottawa.
Still to come here on CBC Windsor News at 6, a slight warm-up on the way. Your full weather forecast is coming up right after the break. Time now for a live look at weather. Dahlia Ashry joining us for that. Dahlia, we're kind of almost over that cloudy, gloomy period, and I know there's a lot of sunshine on the horizon.
That's right, and I'll explain why in just a bit, but it's mainly to do with the low pressure system and the high pressure system. So if you saw the clouds and a little bit of that rain, that's all going to go away because the high pressure system is on its way. There is a cold front that has been moving through southwestern Ontario, though, so it has been giving a little bit of those cooler temperatures, which we'll take a look at in a second. First, let's take a look at the daily stats. The normal high this time of year is 19 degrees. Today's high is 17. Usually the normal low this time of year is 9 degrees, and today's low is 11 degrees. So sitting right around where we're supposed to be with those seasonal temperatures. And now currently in Windsor, it is 13 degrees, a little cooler out in London, Kitchener and Sarnia, and that's a cold front that I was talking about making its way through parts of southwestern Ontario, giving those cooler temperatures. As you can see, there's also that precipitation activity that is making its way out, and this is the cold front, and the frost advisory that I was talking about also is around Kitchener, so a little cooler out there. But yeah, so what's happening here is this low pressure system is slowly making its way out of the province, and then we get that high pressure system, and that's what starts to give us those clear skies. So we're going to say goodbye to those clouds by tomorrow afternoon, really, and then as we head into Thursday, that's when we're going to start seeing that sunshine. Now we are going to see a little bit of that rain peeking through overnight tonight, but mainly cloudy skies as we head into tomorrow, and then clear skies by Thursday morning as you commute to work, and we will see those clear skies continue over the next few days. And then also the windy conditions. Winds are still gusting quite heavily. Winds are gusting up to 35 kilometers an hour tonight until 8 o'clock. It will start to get a little lighter, and then it will pick back up again, and then a little lighter again on Wednesday evening. It will be gusting up to 23 kilometers an hour. Now overnight tonight, temperatures will drop because that cold front that we were talking about. So it will be 9 degrees, those single digits. The only areas that have double digits is London, Ontario, and Sarnia, 12 degrees, but the rain is sticking around. And look at that loss of sunshine on its way. And then Saturday and Sunday, look at that, 20 degrees. So it's taking us back a little bit, making it feel like summer for a bit. But then by the evening, you know, the temperatures drop again. So if you have any plans for the weekend, that's the time to enjoy it.
All right, Dahlia, I know the cool weather I don't mind at night, but it was pretty cold over the last couple of days. And my wife even said, let's turn on the heat, and I had to talk her down. It's that cold front that's moving through the southwestern Ontario region, and you're going to see a little bit of that, but then it starts to pick back up by Saturday and Sunday in the evening. So she can have her moment, have the blankets, and then back to those warmer temperatures. Okay, all right, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Still to come here on CBC News, we'll take a look at Pakistan and the devastating flooding situation there coming up next. The United States is boosting its aid to Pakistan with a total of just over $66 million now going to the South Asian country. Pakistan is struggling to deal with flooding that's killed about 1,600 people since June. The damage also left hundreds of thousands of people without homes. The CBC's Margaret Evans looks at the situation in one particular spot in the Sindh province.
We're standing on a levee right next to Lake Manchar, and it's a good place to explain at least part of what's going on in this part of Sindh province. When the flooding began, the lake came very close to flooding its banks, coming up over the top here. And when that happened, officials knew that they were in trouble, so they cut this levee, which is about 60 kilometers long, in 3 different places to try to control the water. But it didn't stop the flooding and the devastation to come, because if you look out onto the other side of it, you'll see a valley that used to be lush farmland. People grew cotton here, they grew wheat, and now it's completely submerged in water. We've been touring the area a little bit by boat, talking to some people who are still living or staying on their rooftops, if those rooftops exist, and there aren't very many. Ask them why they're still there, because they don't have clean drinking water. It's impossible, very difficult to get supplies in or out. They say they're afraid of looting, that what they have salvaged, they've managed to get up onto these high areas. They don't have a plan. They say the government isn't giving them enough help. They can get into the nearest city for about $1 or $2 if they happen to find a boat going along. So it gives you a very clear idea of just how devastating these floods have been, how difficult it is to help people in need. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Sindh Province.
That's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. And something to watch out for tomorrow morning, the Canadian film North of Normal premiered at TIFF earlier this month in Toronto, and it stars an 8-year-old from Windsor. She'll be chatting with Nav Nanwa on Windsor Morning, and that is tomorrow morning. And don't forget, we're on social media as well. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is coming up next. Have a great night.